Hi there. Today I want to take a quick look at a couple of zines from Thomas Campbell. Goes by Comicsblogger on Instagram and Twitter. And at some point late last year, he decided he was going to put out a little zine of him writing about comics. I immediately ordered number 0, which he just gave away, and then announced that in the start of January he would have number 1, which would be a best of 2022 issue, and would be just kind of his writing on comics. And as someone who's considered doing something like this himself, I was very excited to read this, especially from someone that I know on Twitter. I don't know Thomas personally, but he's a good follow on Twitter, is into good comics. So anyway, just thought I'd take a quick look at this and just give a shout out to something I thought was a very cool project and something that I hope he sticks with. And if anybody else wants to order copies, I believe he sold out of his initial print run of 50, which is pretty great, and I believe he'll keep making them available. So anyway, this first issue 0, like I said, was just sort of a freebie. I think it was something for him to test the waters, see how mailing went, all of that. So he has a little intro here, and then he kind of gets right into it, and he writes a nice review of Acting Class by Nick Dernasso, a book that was, often talked about last year. Some people seem to really, really like it. Some people kind of shit all over it. I was sort of in the middle. I thought that he did a lot of great things in the book, and just did not stick the landing. Don't want to have too many spoilers here, but that is a conclusion that Thomas Campbell comes to as well. Though he does a nice piece of writing about it, so if that interests you at all, I would highly recommend this. So it was a good choice, I think, for him to focus on a book of the moment that people were talking about. In the back, he writes about a few more minor works, not necessarily in quality, but just in terms of renown. Magic Nation number 1 by Ellen O'Grady, published by Fieldhouse. Parent Thing by Julia Gutzeit, self-published. And Hypermutt 1-4 by Max Huffman, also self-published. So nice little write-ups on some comics that and also Healthy Body, Healthy Brain by A.T. Pratt. So some nice little write-ups on stuff that he found interesting. And so that leads us into this one, issue 1, which is a little thicker, obviously. This is his best of 22. He gives a little introduction, kind of explaining why he wanted to do this, or at least some of his motivations. Then he just gets into it, and I believe there's 10 comics in here. Yes, 10 comics that he liked this year. I won't talk about anything he says in case somebody actually wants to read this thing and enjoy it for themselves, but I'll just mention the comics here. Duck Comics number 1 by Ian McKay, published by Hybrid. That's a new creator to me and a new comic to me. Audra Show number 6 by Audra Stang, self-published. I'm aware of this comic because of the critic Ryan Carey, 4-color Apocalypse on social media and on Patreon. Has talked about this comic and said very nice things, so it's on my radar, but I haven't actually seen one in person, I don't believe. It Hurts Till It Doesn't by Khalil Kassir, published by Diskette Press. I read this, a friend of mine, shout out to Sean from Athenium Art, he made me aware of this comic maybe a year ago, maybe even longer, and it's a pretty affecting work. I would highly recommend checking it out. So that's one I've actually read. Time Zone J by Dooley Doucette, drawn and quarterly, much talked about by everybody. Ryan Carey, who I just mentioned a minute ago, I think it was his book of the year. Austin English of Domino Books, also his book of the year. In the most recent video, Sleepy Reader, where he talks about comics on the fringe, quote unquote fringe, he does a nice flip through of that book and talks about it if you wanted to get a better sense of it. Jaywalk Comics #1, published by Domino. It's an anthology of work by people who you're probably not going to see anywhere else, or not very many other places. Talk to My Back, Murasaki Yamada, drawn and quarterly. I've bought this book, but I have not read it yet, but everything I've heard about it is a rave. A Frog in the Fall and Later On by Linnea Sterte, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, published by Piao. Beautiful book. I know I've seen videos about this book, and I'm coming up short on where I've seen those, so my apologies to anybody out there. But a very handsome book, one I might take a look at myself at some point. Cricut's Color Special #1, Blood of the Virgin. Fantastic one-shot comic published by Secret Headquarters by Sammy Harcum. And this story originally appeared in an anthology, but it was presented so nicely, I went ahead and picked up the single issue, and it was a fantastic read. Plaza by Yuichi Yokoyama, published by Living the Line, also here on YouTube. Yuichi Yokohama has never done much for me. I know he's much loved by art comics connoisseurs, and I've been unwavering about whether I should try this one or not. It's a very handsome book. It looks very nice, but this review may have pushed me over the edge to give it a try. And then Cartoon Show #3 by Derek M. Ballard, self-published. I'm familiar with Ballard's name, but I have never read any of his comics. So, and then he gives a nice list of honorable mentions here. And each one has a brief write-up, but Campbell is a good writer. Everything is, he gets to the point. He has something to say about the things that he's interested in. I'm curious to see if he'll ever tackle anything. I guess he tackled acting class, which he didn't care for so much. So, but these are all things that he was very enthusiastic about. So, anyway, I would highly recommend it. You can reach out to him on social media, or comicsblogger1@gmail.com if you'd like to get a copy of this first issue. Anyway, nice to see these kinds of things. I'm not sure if Bubbles was the icebreaker, if it was something else that I'm forgetting, but it's nice to see this proliferation of print publications about comics, and I think this new zine by Thomas Campbell is a great addition to that group. So anyway, just wanted to recommend that, and take care.